When we say informal learning, we are talking about any community setting where people engage with the resources at their own leisure. Youth centres, libraries, parents, or people with a general interest in photography or history. Here are some good activities to start with. Select 2 portraits from the box set or the web app and ask, what can we learn from the sitters based on what we see? She is dressed in what appears surprisingly modern attire. Her dress is made from a similar fabric to the shawl draped around her shoulders. She has a necklace made of many shiny beads, possibly silver or hematite. She is wearing a small hoop earring adorned with a type of bead or pearl and a head wrap concealing her hair. She sits gazing purposefully to the right of her, away from the camera. We can reflect that she is not dressed in typical Victorian style. Think of the elaborate and voluminous dresses and bonnet hats, particularly as the sitter poses for a formal portrait. His photograph was taken in 1864 in London. He wears a turban with what appears to be gems and strings of pearls. He is also wearing a set of dangling earrings, perhaps made from pearls. He is wearing a velvet jacket with embroidered lapels, and around his neck is a choker of pearls made up of 6 strands with a cameo attached. He is directly looking at the camera in a confident manner. From looking at these 2 images, both sitters appear to be important people. Their dress and posture suggest a particular status and wealth, something we can also assume, given that commissioning a portrait at the time would have been expensive and not something everyone could afford. Eleanor toured the UK as a member of the African Choir, a group of 16 performers and college graduates from South Africa, whilst Duleep was the Maharaja of Lahore at a time in history when India was being colonised by the British. The exiled Maharaja was a guest of Queen Victoria during the 1860s and made England his home. The African Choir also performed for Queen Victoria during their tour at the royal residence. Now that we have closely analysed the images, we can try to imagine what the sitters were thinking or feeling during this period in history. An interesting exercise to explore this might be to write a letter to a friend from the perspective of the sitter. What would be in this letter? Would you ask about the weather? Would there be stories about encounters with the English? Would there be observations about everyday life or politics? This exercise encourages people to think beyond their own experiences by applying creative thinking, visual literacy, and writing to a particular situation. If you are working with a group, they may want to read the letters to one another. We can also explore particular themes by selecting a series of portraits and comparing them. Take gender, for example. I have selected Sarah Forbes Bonetta, Maharani Duleep Singh, an unidentified sitter, circa 1880s. Each portrait features a lone woman standing for her portrait. How are the women dressed? Can you tell the type of fabric that their dresses are made from? Do their dresses look like everyday Victorian clothes, or are these for a special occasion? Are they wearing any types of jewels? How are they posing? Are they looking at the camera directly? Is the portrait staged using props, and what do these objects signify? The closer we look, and perhaps with some additional research, we can begin to think more deeply about the role and status of these particular women. Reviewing the information provided for each sitter, we learn that all 3 women were in the UK in the latter half of the 19th century, arriving from countries including Egypt and modern-day Benin, and they were women who had enough wealth to sit for portraits. Sarah Forbes Bonetta was Queen Victoria's protégée and was part of the British upper class. Maharani Duleep Singh was the wife of the Maharaj of Lahore, Duleep Singh, also a member of the upper class. The unidentified sitter remains without a personal history. She may have been a financially independent professional woman, and yet her presence is crucial to this collection. She gives us a glimpse into what is left out of history, the people forgotten, some might say not deemed significant enough, or perhaps simply erased through lack of accurate preserved records to provide a full picture of the past. To engage further with the personal histories of these or other sitters in the collection, one could write a diary, imagining a day in their lives. During the 19th century, many women kept diaries, Queen Victoria famously so, which provide historical documentation on the life experiences of women at the time. Think about the world around the sitter, what they might do each day. who they would visit, what sorts of conversations they would have. Did they look after children? Did they have any children of their own? What brought them to England? What role did they play in their household? Each diary entry could be shared with a group and discussed to see what was left out and what could have been added. Further discussion might explore how women who kept diaries tended to be those with leisure time and literacy. Was this typical for women in these photographs and more widely in Victorian Britain? One final activity that can be inspired by the resources is the act of taking a portrait. To do this, you would need a camera and a plain backdrop, and each participant could bring along a special set of clothes or objects to pose with. You might want to play with different poses by asking participants to sit or stand for the portrait. Should they look directly into the camera or gaze to one side? What do they want to say with their body language? What do they want to convey with their facial expression or their gaze? Ask them how they would want people who discovered their portrait 100 years in the future to view them. If you print your portraits at A3 size, you could even create an exhibition using the modern-day portraits with those from the exhibition in a box, creating a conversation between the past and the present, to paraphrase Stuart Hall.